Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the Wealth Amplifier podcast. I'm Matt Liebman. No Aaron Marks or Patrick Swift today. They have been more than replaced. We are excited to have our celebrity guest. Joining me today is Casey Jorgensen, head of the, let me see if I get this right, Casey, Dynasty Institute for Adaptive Leadership, otherwise known as DIAL, and also Director of Relationship Management at Dynasty Financial Partners. She works with some of the top RIA firms in the country, helping them grow smarter, lead stronger, and build the next generation of advisory firms. So without any further ado, Casey, welcome to the Wealth Amplifier podcast.
Thank you, Matt. It's an honor to be here. And Amplius is definitely one of those top RIA firms that I get the pleasure and opportunity to work with on a daily basis. So thank you for having me.
Well, as you know, and as the listeners know, in this podcast, flattery will get you everywhere. So thank you. So let's start, before we get to Dynasty and the work you're doing there in the industry, let's talk about you. Tell us a little bit about your career journey, and in wealth management, you've been on sort of both sides of the aisle here in terms of independence versus big firm life.
Sure. So to kind of give the audience a sense of my age, I got most interested in the wealth management industry during the Great Recession. I was in high school in 2008, and it had a pretty traumatic effect on my life at that time. Unfortunately, my dad had lost his job. We had to sell our home. I didn't understand what was going on in the market. I was very confused by it. And usually when I'm intimidated by something, it makes me lean in to try to understand more. So I got very interested in wealth management at that point and realized that it's a great education not only for myself personally, but there are actually jobs where you can help people on their education of how to manage their financials and help navigate all of these complex topics. So after college, I actually started at a regional broker-dealer in the Carolina area. I'm originally from Florida and eventually made my way back to Florida. Worked at another fairly large regional broker-dealer that was headquartered where I'm from in St. Petersburg, Florida. And what was cool about working there is that I was at a really interesting time in the industry. They were doing a lot to attract women. There was a big movement towards getting the CFP and focusing more on financial planning. There was an increased stress on the fiduciary duty, and there were changes at FINRA with Reg BI coming into play on this best interest standard to try to get it to equate to the fiduciary standard. At the same time, we had an aging advisor demographic and a lack of next gen coming into the space. And there was also an explosion of wealth tech that was coming. So all of these things, I think, contributed to the movement toward independence. And the firm that I was at the time, it had multiple affiliation channels. So there was an employee advisor channel, there was a IBD channel, there was a retail bank channel, and then there was also a custodian. So I got to kind of see all the different flavors of how an advisor can conduct business with their client. And what I noticed being at that firm is that over time, there's a progression with some advisors of maybe I start as an employee advisor, maybe I, join an IBD, and then maybe, I move to independence. But what I was noticing is there was this rush to move to fully independent. And I wasn't sure with the firm that I was at the time was being strategic enough about how to support independent advisors. And coincidentally, just at that time that was happening, Dynasty, the firm that I'm at now, had relocated their headquarters from New York City down to St. Petersburg, Florida. And their story was really, really inspiring in that they were entrepreneurs helping other entrepreneurs launch independent wealth management firms. And they had a really cool strategy and offering of how to best support independent wealth management firms. And at the time, I think there were like 50 to 60 employees, and it was during COVID. And I decided to leave the safe, big corporate world and join Dynasty. It was a risk at the time, but now that I'm 5 years in, I'm an owner of the company. So I do own company stock. I've seen a lot of cool stuff come out of Dynasty out of the last 5 years. We've tripled in size, more than tripled in size since I've been there. So it's been a really, really interesting journey to land where I'm at now.
That's great. So, what's interesting about that is, first of all, I've known you for almost 5 years. We've probably spoken, I'm going to say hundreds of times, and maybe in person dozens of times. And I never knew that backstory of the 2008 and your family and all that. So thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that was part of the journey. And I will also, I know this is not your first rodeo when it comes to podcasts and interviews, but that was about as effective a job as I've ever seen of not naming the firm you used to work for and describing it in such a way that it literally can only be one firm. So well done there.
Thank you.
I'm not hiding anything. People can find your resume online, but it's a nice firm. But so before we get more into Dynasty and the industry, from a client's perspective, for the people that are listening to this, clients, prospective clients, individual, generally speaking, high net worth investors, why should they care if their advisor is, quote, independent versus at a big firm, at a private bank, what they call a wirehouse or a broker dealer? What does all this jargon mean, and why should a client care?
So, a client should care for many reasons. I think what really inspired me to join Dynasty was our CEO, Cheryl Penny's origin story. So he was part of Smith Barney prior to it becoming part of Citi. And he was in charge of their kind of by invitation only private wealth offering, where he developed an entire program so that he can sit next to advisors to try to win high net worth and ultra high net worth products by positioning Smith Barney's firm resources, services, products, etc. And what he noticed sitting next to these advisors that were pitching to these very wealthy investors is those investors were like, why would I partner with you when I can work with a family office where my advice and the products that I receive in my custody are part of three separate things? It's almost like I'm paying so much more to be part of an isolated single entity where all of those things are wrapped up together. And it really put a light bulb in Cheryl's head that the way that the ultra high net worth are receiving products, services, advice, and custody are different than a high net worth investor or even retail investor. And that's not really how it should be, right? Like, how come I can't democratize what they're doing in the ultra high net worth space and the family office space and bring it to a common investor? And that's what really sparked the idea of Dynasty, is this idea of triangulation of advice. And why that's important is it provides unconflicted advice. So if you're an end investor and you're a client and you're looking for an advisor, you want that advisor to be a buyer on your behalf. And independence allows that advisor to be a buyer on your behalf, no longer a consumer of the products and services that are just existing within the four walls and confines of their financial institution. So it gives you more optionality, better pricing, better access, and ultimately better advice overall. So in an unconflicted way. So I think it's better for the advisor, it's better for the client, it's better for everyone.
Sold. And 4.5 years in, I'm on board. So let me ask you. I just want to peel back one thing you were talking about there, and then I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Dynasty's role. But so you started at Dynasty, what, 5 years ago?
5 years ago, yep.
Yeah, so right, you were about 6 to 9 months ahead of us. We launched in early 2021, and I don't think I met you until after we launched. I think it was our first,
I remember when you launched, but I was not originally assigned to you, but got was very excited when I finally got reassigned to you. But no, I was not there for your
So
lunch.
yes, I think we had lunch at that tiki spot in St. Pete when we
We
came down.
did.
Yes,
Good
yes,
memory.
yeah. So, but anyway, I remember when we were doing our transition, calling all the clients and explaining to them why they should follow us on this journey and so on, and what would be in it for them, what would be in it for us, why we're doing this, all the standard conversations. And as you know, I have both a personal and professional network in New York City, despite the fact that I'm not up there. And what I found was, and look, our business is doing great. The clients came, so on and so forth. But to the extent there was resistance, there was a little bit more resistance from New Yorkers. And I attribute it to, and still to this day, frankly, when I talk to people and so on, it's almost like they're in their communities and everybody works at one of these big banks, these big Wall Street firms. And there is a little bit more of an education of like, wait a second, all these people in my community, like, are you saying like they're not working at the right place? Like, what are they all doing? Right. And I think there's a little bit more of a pedestal that they put Wall Street firms on in New York, whereas I found the rest of the country was a little bit more like, you're leaving Wall Street? Wonderful. Like, sign me up. So I don't know where my question is in this, but in terms of in your role about independence being better for clients, where do you think the big firms in finance that have had these big buildings and are publicly traded and all this stuff, where do you think they're going to come out in all of this? And just curious.
No, it's an interesting point that you're making. Really, after the recession, big firms got a bad name, but at the same time, their brands still have a ton of positive connotations. And maybe we're a little too far removed for people to remember some of those negative. And so it's maybe in this in between. But the big firms, they are really smart and they do make really good decisions and they do have really, really talented people working for them. And there's benefits of those big firms. But as far as like where they're gonna land in this movement toward independence is what I foresee and what we're already starting to see is you're going to have these firms build out corporate RIAs or start buying some of these RIAs on their own. Or, like you saw with Goldman already, or what we've seen with Goldman, is they built out their own custodian.
Yep. Yep.
So I think they're catching the hint that the way that they've always done it isn't going to work in the future. And so I think they're getting closer to the independent space, which is smart instead of trying to fight it. Doesn't mean they're still not trying to fight it. I mean, every day there's a news article that comes out about something silly that they do to instead of trying to improve the cultures of their firms to make their advisors want to stay, sometimes they make the mistake of building a deeper moat so that they can't leave. So I would encourage them not to do that, or actually continue to do it because it only helps us out
Right.
and gives us more opportunity. But I think we'll see the rise of more corporate RIAs and those firms starting to invest in some of the mega RIAs and large RIAs that we're seeing in the space come up.
Yeah, and I think backing that up, and I fully agree with you. But your firm, while still privately held, did do a round last year. Was it last year or the year before? I forget. And some of the biggest firms on Wall Street took meaningful positions in your firm, including what I consider to be sort of the premier banking firm out there. So, and this is all publicly available. I'm not speaking out of
Yes.
so yes, I think that was a strong endorsement not only of Dynasty but of the whole RIA movement. Now, so let's talk a little bit about Dynasty before we talk about leadership and the future. What exactly, in your words, does Dynasty do? When you think of that triangle that you described before, what is their leg of the triangle? And some of our clients that are listening are very well aware of what Dynasty does, and others are just like, yeah, 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 yeah. I know Matt, I know Sam, I know Aaron, I know Pat. I don't know this Dynasty firm. And then we have non-clients listening as well. Can you describe Dynasty's role in the relationship?
Sometimes it's easier than describing what Dynasty is. It's easier to describe what we are not. So, we are not a PE firm. We are not a broker dealer. We are not an RIA. We are not a strategic aggregator. We are a platform provider of professional services and wealth tech serving independent wealth management firms. That is really what we are and what we do. We are most known for helping launch independent wealth management firms like Amplius from the four wires, but we also work with existing RIAs, and we also work with advisor recruits who maybe want to join one of our network partners as part of their org chart. So we do a lot of different things, but at the base, we are bringing together all the best in class technology and professional services and helping integrate that experience and providing the implementation so that successful advisors and business owners like you, Matt, can continue to focus on client facing activities and not have to worry about back and middle office services so that you can continue to grow and scale and realize your American dream, essentially. We intentionally do not own more than 25% of any of the firms in our network. And the reason being is we find that when the original owners of those entities have the majority of that ownership, they are more incentivized to grow. We don't want to become a controlling partner. We want to have the best in class business owners who want to grow. And that's what we do, and we help enable growth. The hard part about that business model and why I'm paranoid every day is that you can't unplug from us. We don't own the underlying assets. There's not a lot of tethers tied to us. So if we're not helping firms like Amplius continue to grow, continue to scale, to continue to operate more efficiently, there's a chance that you could leave us in the future. But we have a very good relationship with our network firms. I think we're really partnership oriented, and we pretty much know everything about you guys, I feel like, at this point. So, and I think there's power in that partnership, and we give you a lot of resources and support, and equally, you give us a lot of feedback so that we can get better as well.
And I think the feature of Dynasty that you mentioned causing some angst and paranoia in the senior leadership like you at Dynasty, I actually think is one of your real strengths, in that when someone's free to leave, they don't want to go. It's when someone is not allowed to leave, they're like, get me out of here.
Right.
And I think what it has created is this amazing network. I think the underappreciated part when I first met with Cheryl and Ben and the whole team at Dynasty, and we made our decision to launch our firm, the part that we did not appreciate was how great the network is. And we go to all these events around the country. There are, 50 to 60 firms sitting in our shoes at any given time. And everybody there was a pretty elite advisor at their firm, ran a pretty big practice, and is now joined up voluntarily and wants to be there. And that creates a totally different environment, which is my segue to some of the work you are leading at Dial, the Institute for Adaptive Leadership at Dynasty. So why don't you share a little bit about where that program came from, the type of work you're doing, and for any clients that are listening, when I disappear once a year, either to MIT or to Aspen or do something with Kellogg or whatever, that's all Casey's fault. It's her program that she's designed. So tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you for that segue. So, when we think about the Dynasty Institute for Adaptive Leadership, that's a mouthful. So, we do call it DIAL for short. It was really in reaction to a few trends that we were seeing across the industry. So, the first trend was that the big four wires, who were historically really, really good at training and professional development, you started to see divestment in that area of those firms. And those excellent training programs were given less and less resources. So that was what was happening at the broker dealer level. On the other side, with this movement toward independence, independence is still kind of the Wild West. It's very fragmented. And in terms of training and professional development, you either have these really great boutique practice management shops that are maybe run by one or two people, and they're excellent consultants, but they're still a little bit more geared towards, again, broker dealers and IBDs, and not necessarily fully independent firms. And they also don't really help with implementation. And on the other end of the spectrum, they're the big four consulting firms who are excellent, but out of reach for the common RIA, and they can't afford to spend that kind of money on that kind of consulting. And so, where Dial came in is the happy medium between those two. It's that, we have the implementation, but the deep expertise of the consulting firms, and we can do it at scale across our network. And frankly, our network was coming to us saying, "Hey, I need ways to develop my team. I feel like I'm on an island," which is where the whole independent but not alone tagline came from. And there's power in that community. And what's interesting about moving from the broker dealer into independence is at the broker dealer, I mean, you're essentially competing with the others in your office. You have the same brand, you're offering the same products, you're offering the same services. And so essentially, like, it's not always the friendliest environment in the branch at the broker dealer, and you're kind of unwilling to share kind of your strategy of how you're going to continue to grow and service your clients, because it's limiting on what you are allowed to do differently. Whereas with independence, you can have a different org chart structure, a different culture, a different service offering, a different client segment. You can have different technology stack. There's so many different things that you're now no longer looking at your peers in the community as competition, but as extremely helpful to the challenges and opportunities that are presented in independence, because your world, even though you're part of a smaller firm, gets a lot bigger. There's a lot more shiny objects, there's a lot more products and services. And it's really helpful to sit next to someone who's encountering the same thing and talk about it. So even though, like, like to think that I'm brilliant and I can put together awesome content, and that's part of it, a lot of it is just getting out of the way and facilitating conversations and experiences so that those in the community can talk to each other about that. But that's essentially what we try to do with Dial in the community.
Yes, and as you know, I am 4 for 4 at attending the Advisor to CEO
My
program.
best student.
Yes, thank you for that. And it's very true, and it's something that I noticed and was surprised by. And it's sort of counterintuitive until you really dive into it, that when you're sitting at a big firm, it is not a very collaborative environment with the other people there. In fact, it can be
No.
quite a competitive environment. I have some people I'm still friendly with from my big firm days, but I can count them on one hand. Whereas when you go out to this independent world, and I have no ownership stake in most of the, in the firms I'm meeting with, like, if they do well, great, maybe you can make some indirect benefit to me or something, but it's not really directly correlated. But I think there's a ton of collaboration. I don't want to, I think there are 57 firms in the Dynasty network. I would say, I mean, there are probably people at 35 or 40 of them that I could text at any time
Yeah.
and share ideas. And that's really helpful.
We have a really cool community, I do have to say. Very impressive people.
Well, thank you. I agree. So, in terms of going with the amplification theme, given that we are Amplius and this is the Wealth Amplifier podcast, from a client and or advisor perspective, if there's one idea in this industry that you would like to amplify at this point, what would it be? Either whether it's something that a firm should focus on, something a client should be looking for. What do you want to amplify?
I'm going to focus on the advisor side of this. Oh gosh, there's so many things I want to amplify. So many things are coming to mind right now. So this might be a hodgepodge of many different things that I want to amplify.
Let me refine it a little bit. When you think of the other 56 firms in the network, how could they be more like Amplius?
No, I would categorize Amplius as a growth engine, and I would love for many in the network to operate like Amplius. I think you guys have done an excellent job of growing the firm, and I would say for any owner of an RIA, and you're really trying to decide your path forward, and maybe you've just transitioned into independence, I think you really have to decide, what hat do you want to wear? Do you want to continue to be a great advisor, or do you want to step into that executive role? Usually, when we have firms coming to us that want to break away from the broker dealer, I really press them on that, is that do you want more out of your career? Do you want this last chapter of your career to really being about transforming the skill set that you currently have today? And a lot of growing and scaling an RIA is, I'll steal this from you, Matt, is debrokerizing your mindset,
Ah,
right?
thank you.
And what do I mean by that? Is that at the broker dealer, one of the things that you can control is your relationship with the clients. And then it's in your rep code, and then it's your reputation. When you launch your own firm, you almost need to completely turn that on its head. You have to be willing to let others run client relationships. It's not just your client, it's a client of the firm. You have to be willing to not be in every meeting. You have to be able to step away from the things that you're naturally good at, whether it's being in client meetings, running the investment portfolio, growing the business, and meeting with prospects, and really focusing on business operations and the vision and the strategy in the future. And that takes a lot of discipline because there's a lot of reward in doing the things that you're already naturally good at, but you're not going to grow that way. So you have to be really comfortable with delegating what you know that you're the best at and do things that you're not as good at yet. And whether that's delegating it to your junior people, or it's delegating it to a resource partner, or it's maybe implementing a technology, those are the things that are going to help you grow and scale. And you have to be really honest with yourself if you really want to do that. Some people will say it and then they don't follow through with it. So it's getting really, really comfortable with delegation, but that's how you build a company. Otherwise, you just have a successful practice. So that would be what I would amplify.
Wow, thank you. I think that was excellent. And speaking of amplification, we always allow our guests in the last moment of the Wealth Amplifier podcast to amplify a cause, a nonprofit, something that personally resonates with them. And so the floor is yours, Casey. What would you like to amplify?
Sure. So I know that you know this about me, but I just had my first child in February of last year. And I'm having my second child in almost 3 weeks now. And a nonprofit that I've become aware of that's really, really interesting. It's called Chamber of Mothers. And it was started in 2021, really by working mothers who, are advocating for paid family leave and more flexible work, and also just better maternal care, access to daycare. I have a very demanding job and I travel a lot. And even though I have the best village around me, it's still really, really hard. And I'm supported by a company that offers paid leave. I'm very lucky in many respects, but it's just so difficult to keep women in the workforce and keep moving up that ladder when childcare comes into play. And even with someone fully resourced like me, I still feel like the burden of it. It's very, very hard. And so I really appreciate what this organization is advocating for, because I would love to help keep women in the workforce and keep climbing to reach the top, just because I think that will provide better opportunities for everyone. So that's what I would amplify, I think. And there are local chapters, I think, in the Philadelphia area. So definitely look into it.
I will check that out. I was not familiar with. I know the cause matters to you, but I didn't know the actual name of the organization. So I will check that out. And thank you for that. And thank you so much for joining and sneaking this recording in before you leave for maternity leave. And obviously, I'll talk to you before then. But best wishes and congratulations.
It's been an honor and a pleasure, Matt. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you.